Morning, Adam. Adam, look who's here.
So
Okay. Okay, everybody, we are on Kisolik Rav Zera, 53A2. When Rav Zera went to the Holy Land, today we're gonna we're gonna be moving towards a new subject. We're gonna get into a new subject soon. Before we know it, maybe today or tomorrow we'll get into a new subject. Kisolik Rav Zera Ashkel Rav Binyan Bar Yefet Yosef V'Kamalei Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. When Rav Zera went up, he went up to the Holy Land, and he met Rav Binyamin Bar Yefet that was saying over in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. As Rabbi Yochanan was the big rabbi in the Holy Land, right? Rabbi Yochanan, he was the big rabbi in the Holy Land. And what did he say? Notim matat al kavechama b'Shabbat. You could go ahead, and we said you can't place a saddle cloth on an animal, on a donkey on Shabbat, with the intention of the animal going out to Rishut Rabim, the public property on Shabbat. It might look like you're going for a long trip. Tosfos discusses the issue. Might not be considered a piece of clothing if you didn't put it on before the Shabbat, because an animal cannot
I think that's too much.
carry something on Shabbat. It can't carry a load. Can't carry anything that's not. If it's he can wear clothing. If he's cold, the animal's cold. You could clothe the animal. You could put jewelry on the animal, but you can have beautiful jewelry on the animal. But you can't have normal jewelry on an animal. But something that's not that type of item is considered would be an issue of carrying. But there is a law that if it has the saddle cloth tied to the animal from before Shabbat, it could go out to public property. If it's not tied to the animal before Shabbat, the question is, are you allowed to go ahead and put the saddle cloth on the animal and let it go into the courtyard? Just to go into the courtyard, not to go Moni Akiva, not to go into public property? So that was the question. And he says, you could go ahead and you could, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan said you could go ahead and do that, put the saddle cloth on, let it go out into the courtyard. So Amalei, Rav Zera said to Rabbi Binyamin Yefet, you said the name Rabbi Yochanan, Yisha. You said good. I come from Bavel. I come from Babylon. And in Babylon, that's what the Aryoch. Who's the Aryoch? Aryoch is a title of respect, because Shmuel was called, we refer to Shmuel as Aryoch. Aryoch is the name of a king, Tosfos points out in Bereshit. Elasa was one of the kings, by the 4 kings and the 5 kings over there, and refer to Shmuel in a way with Aryoch, because why that name? Aryoch is like Ari, like a lion. Powerful, like it says you're supposed to get up in the morning. It's kabek Ari. Supposed to get up in the morning like a lion, right, Adam? To serve Hashem. People got to get out of that bed. No snoozing the alarm, right, Ralph? You got to just right, Mordechai. You got to no snoozing the alarm. You got to go ahead and get up like a lion. He was a lion. In Torah, this past Shabbat, we had a mini Shabbaton, and what we learned, Shagat Aryeh, the Sefer Shagat Aryeh. Also, his name was Rabbi Aryeh Leib, and he called it, and the name of the Sefer was with Aryeh, with the lion. So, Yehuda is referred to as a lion, right? Yehuda is the strongest of the Shvatim. So, Yishav V'chein Tagama Ayoch B'Bavel. Ayoch B'Bavel also, back in Bavel, in my hometown, Aryoch also said the same thing, that the animal could go out to the court. You could put the saddle cloth on the animal on Shabbat, and who is that? Who Ayuch Manu Shmuel? It's Shmuel, and it seems that going out into the court, the issue is also: is it appropriate for you to busy yourself with the doing this type of busyness with the animal on Shabbat? Putting on the saddle cloth is so we're saying it's necessary. It's considered it's a necessary thing for the animal, because the animal needs it. It gets cold. The animal gets cold. So the Gemara says, why did Reb Zera say to Rabbi Binyamin Yefet, you know what? What you said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan was that also Shmuel said that. But Rav also said that. But Rav Nami Amra. Why did he tell him? You come to the Holy Land, and you come from Bavel. That's where you have Rav is there and Shmuel is there. So why are you only reporting? And then you hear the report in the Holy Land in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you could place the saddle cloth on the animal on Shabbat for it to go out into the courtyard. And you respond, by the way, that's what Shmuel also says that. But Rav also said that. Why are you saying Shmuel said that? Shmuel's in agreement with that. Rav also agrees to that. You hear the question, Aaron? Why did he tell him, you know what? What you said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Shmuel says that. It's like you say, you know, Rabbi Avad Yosef also says that. Rabbi Ben Zion Abba Shaul also said it. So why only say Rabbi Avad Yosef said it? Rabbi Ben Zion Abba Shaul also went on record and said that you go ahead and do that. So the Gemara says, is that clear? Mordechai, is that clear, the Gemara's question?
But just like, why didn't you mention more?
Right. By not mentioning, by mentioning one over the other, it's why pick on, meaning they're both equally, let's say, they're equally great. So why mention him over the other one? So the Gemara says, good morning, Asaf. So the Gemara says, Ela Shamei, Reb Zera heard the report that was the name Rabbi Yochanan was to have a Messiah, but it's not only it said you could place the saddle cloth on the animal on Shabbat first to go out into the courtyard, but he also said Messiah Bey ve'ein ton teraskal b'Shabbat. And they reported in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you can't hang a basket, what they call like a feed or something, right? To put it by the animal on Shabbat to make it easy for the animal to eat. He doesn't have to bend down to the floor. You put like a basket around his mouth. And that type of level of busyness on Shabbat, just to make it a little bit more easier for the animal, that's excessive. You're getting yourself too busy on Shabbat. It's not warranted, that type of busyness on Shabbat. And Hishameh, he heard that the report in Rabbi Yochanan was that you cannot hang this basket around the neck by the mouth of the animal on Shabbat. But we all know that Rav said you could do that. Rav said not only could put your saddle cloth on the animal on the Shabbat for it to go out to the courtyard, you can even put the traskol, this basket. Therefore, so therefore, that's why Reb Zera said that what you said is that's what Shmuel says, because that's why he only said the idea of, he didn't want to say Rav. This is what Rav says, because Rav did not say you could put. Rav says you cannot, because Rav says you could put the trasko. The comment that was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan was two things. You could put the saddle cloth, and you can't put the basket. So he didn't want to say, that's what he couldn't say that's what Rav says, because Rav said you could put the basket. So on that he says Yashar. That's what he says. Yes, he says Yashar v'chein targama. He says that is also, Yashar means you said good, right? What you said is good. V'chein targama ayoch b'Bavel, and that's what Shmuel says in Bavel, that you could go ahead and do that and put the saddle cloth, but he did not allow. If you look back in the Gemara, see, Shmuel went on record and said you cannot put the basket around. So that's what he says. Shmuel is the one who says you cannot put the basket, and you could put the saddle cloth. So therefore, you couldn't say Rav also said. Rav said you can't. Rav said you could put the basket. Is that clear? Okay. Now, the Kuli Amamiyat, everybody holds that Madat Muta, meaning we have an argument whether you could get busy and put a basket around the neck of the animal by the mouth to make it easy for the animal to eat. Whether that's called excessive effort that's not necessary in Shabbat, that you're getting yourself busy or not. But Maisham Ukaf, why is it different than Ukaf? We reported earlier that you cannot remove a saddle from the donkey on Shabbat? And the Gemara was understanding that if you can't remove the saddle, it seems like the saddle is mukseh, so it would seem a kal v'chomer, it would seem the Gemara wanted to say kal v'chomer that you can't put on the saddle on Shabbat, right? If you tell me that you can't remove it on Shabbat, so it sounds like it's mukseh. If it's mukseh, certainly you can't go ahead and therefore you can't put it on.
Why would it be muktzah?
Right, because the Gemara is saying maybe you have no purpose. That's what the Gemara may be thinking. You don't have on Shabbat. You separate yourself from because saddle, let's say, is usually used. You're putting on a load on the animal, and on Shabbat you can't put loads on animals.
So the word is not allowed.
I mean, muktzah means you're separated from it. You're separated. It's designated. You're separated from it.
You can't move it.
Right. So I'm saying, so the Gemara is thinking. Let's say, what is the common use of a saddle? Right? A bottle you use to drink, right? Use a bottle to drink. A bottle is not mukseh. A saddle is generally used for what purpose? You saddle the animal, you're going to ride on the animal, you're going to put a load on the animal. That's something that I don't do on Shabbat. So the Gemara is thinking that if I can't, now it says they can't remove the saddle on Shabbat. Now, what would be the reason for that? So the Gemara is thinking it's something that's mukseh, so that I don't have right to handle, because I remove myself from using a saddle on Shabbat. So if I'm removed from using on a Shabbat, so I shouldn't be able to put on this. If it's mukseh, then I can't put it on, because the saddle is not a cup. Not a cup. It's not something that it's something that it has general. The use of a saddle is used more in a secular, if that's the right word, or mundane, or weekday use, meaning of activities that are not connected to Shabbat.
Did we say something about how the saddle could serve a warming purpose?
Right. We said right. We did say that the saddle has some limited, and also it's some sort of warmth for the animal. So the question is that enough that people will not be separated from it? The fact that it has that use, does that reach a certain level that now you could put the saddle is not mukseh. With the saddle, now is the issue of mukseh of the saddle, and that's what the Gemara may be thinking now, thinking that level of warmth that it provides is not as sufficient. It's still separated from me from using it in that way, and therefore the Gemara is asking the question. So why is the saddle different than because again, a saddle cloth is also used to protect the animal, the body of the animal from the weight of the saddle, of the weight of also protecting it from the load bumping and scratching into it. So the saddle cloth is also a dual type of purpose. A saddle cloth it's called a saddle cloth. It means it's connected to it's directly underneath the saddle, but it has enough of a use of a warmer. It serves that purpose that people are not separated from handling a saddle cloth, but it is something Mordechai is clear that it's used for warmth enough. It's a multi-purpose item. But the saddle might not be as commonly used as a multi-purpose for that purpose, and that's maybe what the Gemara is thinking. Perhaps it's mukseh. And to that, and therefore, but the Gemara wants to understand what's the difference between the saddle and the saddle cloth. They both are connected to a saddle. One's a saddle cloth, and yet you say one you can't handle, one you can't. The Gemara you can't take off. So the Gemara is thinking if you can't take it off, you can't put it on. If you can't, that's what the Gemara is thinking. And if you can't put it on, why is it different than the saddle cloth? So I started saying maybe the difference is the level of use, right? But the Gemara is still questioning that. What is it why is the saddle cloth more, we're allowed to put on the animal on the Shabbat for the animal to go into the courtyard more allowed than the saddle. Again, we did not say on record you can't put on the saddle. We only said you can't take off the saddle. And the Gemara was thinking, since you told me you can't take off the saddle, most probably you can't put on the saddle, right? That was the Gemara's. A lot of times, someone makes a statement, and the question is, how do you learn? How do you understand the statement? So the Gemara is understanding the statement that you cannot take off the saddle means automatically you cannot put on the saddle. That's what the Gemara is thinking. Let's see the language of the Gemara before. Let's just try to see. If you tell me you can't put it on, we said you can't take it off. So do you need to tell me that you can't put it on? When you put the saddle on, the Gemara is thinking it looks like you're loading up the animal,
You can
right?
take it off, but you can't put it on.
So the Gemara is saying the statement was that you can't take off the saddle, right? We have on record the saddle. If you have a saddle on a donkey, it says you can't handle the saddle with your hands. You could have the animal walk back and forth until the saddle falls off by itself. So so we have to know what are the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are you can't, if the saddle's on the donkey, you can't take the saddle off. That's the fact. And now what will be the reason for that, right? We can't take the saddle off. It didn't give the reason. It says you can't take off the saddle. We could speculate. It's muksa. That's what we could speculate. And if you say you can't take off the saddle, so certainly you can't put on the saddle. Now, what's the certainly you can't put on the saddle? Because the Gemara is thinking that it looks like you're going for a trip. Looks like you look like you plan on loading up the animal. You look like you are when you put on the saddle. So that's what the Gemara is thinking at this point, that there's more reason to forbade the putting on the saddle than removing the saddle. And the Gemara is thinking if you can't remove a saddle on Shabbat, you're just taking it off. Certainly you can't put it on. Certainly you can't, put it on. There's more reason. There's more reason. If I would ask you what's more likely to be, put on a saddle or take off a saddle, what's more of an issue? You say putting on a saddle should be more of an issue. If I allow, and you would say if I allow you to take off the saddle, it should definitely allow you to put on the saddle. To that, and therefore the Gemara is thinking at this point that if you can't take off a saddle, you definitely can't put on a saddle. And if you can't put on the saddle, so why could you put on the saddle cloth? So the Gemara answers, Shiny Hata. There it's different. You know why? Really, the saddle is not mukseh. And really, the saddle will serve as a point of warmth. And really, you should be allowed, this first answer the Gemara, the same way you could put on a saddle cloth, you could put on a saddle on Shabbat. As long as you're going into the courtyard, not outside to the public property. But so why don't we allow you to take off the saddle with your hands? Why do you have to walk the animal back and forth, and you walk the animal back and forth, and then the saddle will fall off by itself? Because there's the phenomenon, the efshad enough of memela, it could fall off by itself, and since it can fall off by itself, you don't need to get busy taking off the saddle.
There's an alternative, less harmful.
There's an alternative that will have you not get busy dealing, handling, putting on, taking off the saddle, and therefore we rather you um we rather you to be let the animal walk back and forth instead of you getting involved and doing excessive work, putting, I don't know if it's a little sweat or getting yourself busy taking off the saddle. That's how some will explain that this is a protection. There's no need for you to get busy with the animal and handling the saddle when it could come off without your involvement. Now, however, the placing of the saddle, the animal can't place the saddle on itself. It needs you to do that. And therefore, the Gemara is thinking this answer holds, you could place the saddle on the animal on Shabbat as long as it's going for the warmth purposes to keep it warm, just like you could put a saddlecloth on. Papa disagrees. He says, Kan lechamama and kan letanana. That the placing of the saddle, of the saddlecloth, the placing of the saddlecloth, the purpose is to warm the animal, right? And the purpose of the taking off the saddle. What's the purpose of taking off the saddle? Meaning he's explaining that taking off the saddle is in order to make the animal cool. Because the animal, what happened? The animal had a load on its back, let's say on Friday afternoon. And now before Shabbat, now come Shabbat, the animal is hot. It has a saddle on. It still did a load. It still has something on it. You took off the load, but it still has a saddle cloth. It has the saddle. The saddle gives heat. But if you're going to remove, and now what do you want to do? You want to make it cooler. You want to give a little air conditioning for the animal. How do you give air conditioning for the animal? By going ahead and taking off the saddle. But the animal is going to cool down even if you don't take off the saddle. Take a little extra time, but because he doesn't have the load on it anymore. He has the saddle, but now let's say he sweated up before Shabbat, the animal. But now with time, the animal is going to cool off, and the saddle won't be such an issue to him. So therefore, we don't want you to get busy taking, it's not enough of a reason to go ahead and get busy taking off the saddle. However, when it comes to the animal being cold, the cold doesn't go away by itself. When you heat it up, you're hot. A guy does a run this morning. If you went in front, you get heated up. You get heated up. With time, you'll cool off. But if you're cold, if it's cold, you don't get warm. If you're cold, you need to put on. That's why we allow you to put on the saddle cloth. So that's Papa Makan lechamama. The reason why you could go ahead and put on the saddle cloth is because you want to warm the animal. Kan litzanana. And the other, but when it comes to removing the saddle, is in order to make it cold, to cool it off. And therefore, lechamama, if you need to go ahead and give a warmth to the animal, itla tzara. The animal has real pain. The animal is cold. We said the donkey, even the summer is cold. Therefore, we allow you to go ahead and get busy to put on the saddle cloth in the summer, even in the summertime. But the tzanana, but if you want to cool off the animal, by the way, air conditioning is a new phenomenon, right? It's not like we're used to air conditioning. They didn't have air conditioning 100 years ago. You know what? A guy, you just exerted yourself. You got hot as a result of your exertion, not because you got hot because of so now that you have the saddle on you, you'll still be fine. You're going to cool off. Sana Leslie Sarah, the donkey doesn't have so much pain when it's a little hot because it's gonna cool off. And Hainu Damishi, that's what people say. Hamara afilu betkufa Tammuz krile. A donkey, even in Tammuz, even in the time that's the most hottest time of the year. We are like in Tkufa Tammuz now, right? We are in that season of Tammuz. Yes, we're in the month of Av. But this season is the summer season. Even then, the animal is very cold, and therefore it needs the placing of it needs the placing of the saddle cloth. But again, this explanation is also saying that you should be able to go ahead and put. It would seem that you could be able to put the saddle on also according to this reasoning. You only can't take off the saddle because it's no need for you to go ahead and get busy taking off the saddle because the animal is not in such a distress by not by having the saddle on. But if the animal would be hot, would be cold, and if you put it on to create warmth, the animal is in distress. So that's that. So therefore, in the um, see that so according so that would be. You see, this is the question, placing the so placing the saddle is a big question. What the law would be regarding placing the saddle? Would we say placing the saddle would be prohibited, or would placing the saddle be permitted? But we could understand why there the we could understand why the removal of the saddle is not something that we should go ahead and allow. Okay, so that would show a difference between the saddle and the saddle cloth. Okay. Um, let us see. Right, so you see, it could be that the placing of the saddle could be allowed. There's room to make an allowance. Right? We see what the Gemara is concluding is that there's room to say that there's a difference between placing a saddle and removing the saddle. Removing the saddle, according to what's clear in the Gemara, removing the saddle is not allowed on the Shabbat, and the placing of a saddle is something of discussion. Okay. And the placing of saddle cloth is permitted as long as it's going out to the courtyard. So those are the givens, right? The conclusion and the conclusion of this Gemara. Those are the givens. Okay, what's the given? Saddle cloth. Placing saddle cloth on the animal on the Shabbat for the animal going to the courtyard to create warmth for the animal is permitted. Removing the saddle on Shabbat forbidden. There's no sufficient need. Either you could go, it's not so that's a real big need. If the animal has that saddle on it, it's going to cool down. The animal will cool down. Or you could, if you want to remove it, there's another way you could do it without handling it. Many ways to skin a cat. I don't recommend skinning cats, but you could just go ahead and just just let it walk back and forth, and the saddle will fall off. Don't have to get busy with it. Placing the saddle, that's up in the air. Okay. Now the Gemara says, now we're going back to, we said that Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan hold that even though you're allowed to place the saddle cloth on the animal on Shabbat to protect the animal from the cold, but you're not allowed to, they have the opinion that you can't get busy in placing this terraskal, this basket around its what do you call it, a feed basket or whatever, around the animal's face to make it more easier for the animal to eat, right? That level of comfort, the luxury, right? That the animal doesn't have to bend down and it just has its bottle and it has its food basket in its mouth. That level you don't have to do. You're not allowed to provide for the animal. That was the opinion of Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav was even more lenient, right? Rav said you could even do that. You could even get busy and place that traskel around, right? And Tosfos, we said, pointed out that the law follows um, Shmuel in this case, that says you cannot put the feed basket, even though the general rule is when you have an argument between Rav and Shmuel, when it's not financial matters, the law follows Rav. And Rav allowed the feed basket, but Tosfos says, but we have Rabbi Yochanan on record here also. It's not just Rav against Shmuel. Rav against Shmuel, who's the winner? When it's not financial matters, Rav. But when it's Rav against Rabbi Yochanan Yochanan's the winner. And Rabbi Yochanan is agreement with Shmuel, you can't put this feed basket. Therefore, it would follow Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Okay, Meitive. Here's the following question. Lo yetze hasus, a horse cannot go out to public property, biznav shual, with the tail of a foxtail. For some reason, how do you like this? They would put a foxtail between the eyes of the animal, of the horse. By the way, horses are beautiful animals, right? The Torah says, you got to be careful, don't, the king, we're going to be learning in Sefer Dvarim, eventually Sefer Dvarim, about one of the laws of a king, the lo yarbelo susim. You can't give the king too many horses, because you give a king a lot of horses, then people are going to want to go back to Egypt. Egypt is the place of the horses. That's where they grow the most, even more recent times, the Kentucky Derby or whatever, these type of races are won by the horses that come from Egypt. So they would put, now when a guy is when a person is good looking, people are concerned from ayin hara sometimes, right? A person's a good looking person, let's be careful ayin hara, right? You don't want someone to give a bad eye, right? That's why Yaakov told his 10 sons, they all were good looking, they all were powerful and good looking. He says, when you go into Egypt to buy the food, go into 10 different gates. Because I don't want you guys are good looking guys, you go come in, 10 strong looking guys, handsome guys, people can give a bad eye. So it seems that the horse, most probably, I presume the ayin hara was to protect the horse. They put, now what does the foxtail have to do with protecting ayin hara? I'm not sure what the foxtail has to do with ayin hara, but they put a fox. How do you like that, Moshe?
I don't know.
What? Okay, but I'm just saying there is a lot. You have to realize that we do find ayin hara when people. Okay. We have to reach here, but I'm just saying there is such a thing to. There are people. Say it again. No, I'm saying, but we do find. I'm saying we do find, in different rabbinic literature concerns about ayin hara, but we have to research it more. But I'm just saying there is this. Concept that people, sometimes people don't wish the right things for somebody, and then it might be an issue. So, but let's see what it says over here. So it says a horse should not go out with this foxtail between its eyes to protect from ayin hara. V'lo bezuhurit, and a zuhurit is the type of thing that it hangs between its eyes for beautification purposes. Meaning, even though we said that an animal could wear something, could wear a certain type of jewelry ornaments that are normal to be used for beautification purposes, so you have to say this is not the common way the animal. It's not enough common that this is with this. This is zuhurit. Zuhurit is like something that shines. A red strip, like red is shiny, a red strip of course to decorate the Most people don't decorate the horse with this red cloth, and you can't go out with it on Shabbat, right? Because then if it's not the normal way to decorate the horse, then it's called extra, excess, and therefore it's like carrying. Lo yetze hazav b'kitshalo. A zav cannot go out. Let's say a zav, a man who has some unusual discharges, and he wants to see if he had another unusual discharge, and therefore he put some sort of pouch around his private area to catch any unusual discharge. So he's now that pouch is carrying. It's not part of the person. It's not clothing. Hazav with that pouch. A goat, if you go ahead and you put a pouch to catch the milk, that the milk shouldn't drip out to the ground. So that's not part of the animal. It's not serving as clothing. It's not serving to warm the animal. It's not protecting the animal from elements. It's just for some other outside source to go ahead and catch the milk.
These are all external pouches as opposed to we would just tie the cow's things.
Right, right, right.
They're internal.
Right, it's not, right. If you tie the udder of the animal, because for the purpose of the animal itself, right? We had discussion about that early in the Mishnah. One opinion said you could tie we'll see more about tying certain things to the animal's udders itself. But here it's not. It's the pouch, right? It's not. You're not tying it directly to the something. You're tying the udders because you want no milk should come. You want the animal to be able to become pregnant, or or whatever. You're doing it for some other. It's not for the purpose of the animal. It's not for the animal. You want the animal to become heavy. So if you tie the thing, we'll see about that. That's one thing. Here we're talking about you want the milk. You want to catch milk. That's not about the animal. You're not doing something for the animal. You're tying this to catch something for yourself, right? Right? That the other thing Adam had to do more for the animal's purpose, and this is directly affecting the animal itself. But we're going to go the Gemara will discuss more about. We're going to get more into about those things. But here we're talking about something that's outside the animal, catching the milk. So that you can't go in. That would be considered carrying. So too, if you put a muzzle you don't want your animal to eat in someone else's property, right? So that is also it's not clothing of the animal. It's not part of the animal itself. It's not for the animal. It's for you. You don't want your animal eating in someone else's property. So that is not, animal can't go out with that. So we'll see more tomorrow. We thank everybody for coming. Have a great day. And Ralph, safe trip. Asaf, take care. All the best. We had a little difficulty today, and he helped us out. Aaron was to the rescue.
Oh, good.
So I just close it I just close it like this. Adam, what do I do? Leave it as this. Just close the thing.
Yeah, or you can X out the video, but other than that,
Yeah. Exit the video. How do I exit the video?
at the top right.